Interview.
Now, Rockstar's been involved for... It's hard to know how long from an external point of view, but this is very much a Team Bondi project. Could you have done this without them?
No, I don't think we could have, to be honest. Rockstar have been involved for over 5 years now, I think. So they've been involved since 2006, and so yeah, they've been involved for 5 years, and we made a kind of completely new type of game, I think, you know, if we were honest about it, and I don't think anybody else would have taken the risk. So no, I don't think we could have done it, you know, without their help and without their kind of patience and loyalty, really.
Now the game is out. Fans are playing it now, and it's received its critical reviews. There has been a lot of confusion since day dot about platform exclusivity, though. Can you shed some light at all on the decision, or at least the announcement, to go multiplat?
Well, when we started the game, we were working for Sony, and we all come from Sony. Well, the original team came from Sony. So we, we developed for PlayStation 3, and that's kind of what we're good at. But as soon as we moved the project across to Rockstar, we went multi-platform straight away. Rockstar have always done multi-platform, and that's why they get such a big audience. So it's kind of crazy if you're an independent developer these days not to do that. So, there has to be an amazingly good financial reason not to do that. So we kind of went from PS3 to Xbox. So that was kind of, supposedly that's an easier route than going the other way around. So that's the way we did it.
Can you tell us about Rockstar's involvement? If it's been since 2006, on a functional level, what have they provided to the game?
We've had guys like Geronimo Barrera, who's the VP of development. He was the guy who kind of hung in there with the game when it was just a text adventure, and who loves old adventure games. And so he's been involved, from the start. And at the points where it wasn't going that well, he took a lot of stripes for the game. So. So he's been involved for a long time. I've got another guy called Josh Needleman, who's a producer on the game, who's out of New York as well. And Josh is an amazing guy in detail, so he'll work on game mechanics with programmers and with our designers. So, and those two have been involved for long periods, spent long periods in the studio. We had a guy called Chris Choi who was here for the best part of 2 years, probably. And we've had everybody from, Les Benzies, who's, the guy behind, all the success of all the GTA series from Scotland. Les has been out here for different times. We've had Sam. We've everyone in the Rockstar family's come out at some point and chivvied us along and helped us, because, it was, crazy big project.
Now, you mentioned adventure games, and as the credits rolled, I really took a step back and realised that even if it was a spiritual successor, I think I'd played Police Quest 4. Is there a Police Quest fan
residing in us? Yeah, there is. There's everything from that, even to when we were doing car chases. We were looking at Chase HQ because we love that game. But Sam and I, when we first met, we were kind of interested in adventure games, because they had in those days they were click and point and pre-rendered, so they looked amazing. But they were sort of stuck inside the game designer's head. You had to be able to sort of think the way they thought, and if you got stuck, you just went away and thought about it for a month or something. Whereas people today won't put up with that kind of stuff. So that's one of the things that's brave about Rockstar. I think, well, if you take what's good about an adventure game and then bring some of all the elements of the other things that they're good at, then potentially you can get to a new audience. And so far we have. It's number 1 2 weeks in a row, right the way around the world, so we're pretty pleased.
Now, after such a long gestation period, 6 years is a long time for anybody. What are some of the lessons that you've walked away with that 2020 hindsight and said, we could have done this differently, we could have done this better?
Yeah, no, we could have done, umpteen things better. We could have, we could have, the way we managed the company and the people and expectations and all that kind of stuff. But we went from something that was 6 people up to 120 odd people, so that was hard to manage. It was hard to get to know everybody and work out what our process was going to be. And then we had to generate the tools and the technology that would make this happen. And a lot of the times when you're doing something completely new, like I even remember when we were working on the Getaway, people in the programming team used to say to me, "Is this a racing game?" And I'd say, "No, it's not a racing game. It's going to be a new type of game." And there's been a lot of that on this one as well. We're saying, "Well, we're trying to do this detective game, and no one's done it before." So you have to just kind of trust and believe me and come along for the ride. And some people do want to do that, and some people don't. So, yeah, it's just more the personal stuff. Like how can we get better at managing these big productions and get more people involved in it in a slightly different way than we do right now. Like writing's a good example. Like I did all the writing, and you go and see how a TV show's made, and generally there's a whole bunch of people writing, and you got to be prepared enough to take a step back and say you do your bit, and if I need, I'll rewrite a little bit, and then just let more people in. I suppose be more inclusive.
Now I think people. It's not too much of a stretch to draw lines with Heavy Rain and L.A. Noire. I mean, similar games in theory developed in a similar sort of time frame. David Cage recently said what to say about L.A. Noire. I think it's an interesting solution to a problem for now, talking about the motion scan. But it's also an interesting dead end. That's exactly what I feel. Their technique is incredibly expensive, and they will never be able to shoot body and face at the same time. Mm-hmm. How do you respond to that?
Well, David makes games and he's good at making games, so he's entitled to his own opinion. My argument would be, is it incredibly expensive? Well, we've got 21 hours of people animated faces there. So if you did that by hand, like what people, other people are proposing, you would probably have 600 or 700 animators in a room, and for any number of years. So my argument would be it's a lot cheaper and it's a lot quicker. And the other thing, I think, the key thing to it is what it does is it captures the spark of life. Unlike anything else you see where you can have the most incredible model or the most incredible shaders, there's no matter how well animated it is, there's no life in it. And when you see this, because of the magic of the process, because it's just what the actor does and then what goes into the game, those people become real, they become alive, and in a way I don't think people have ever seen before. So we're really committed to sort of making that better and having better shaders and better hair and all that kind of stuff, but also going to full body, because we think that when we can take all the strengths of what's great about TV and film and be able to plonk that straight into a game, and I think that's a pretty exciting future. We think it has a lot of future, and in the end, I think you got to as a game maker, you got to be prepared to take what's good about what actors do, and what's good about performance, and just say, that what that person just did on camera was amazing, and if I can put that into my game, then great. And there's other school of thought was that, well, I can sort of capture that performance, and then I can fiddle around with it and make it better. Well, my argument is 100 years of cinema tells you can't make it better. If what you got is at the moment you wanted, then take it and put it in. And if you do, I think you get the kind of reactions to characters that we've been getting.
Now, I have to ask what your plans are for post-launch DLC. We've seen a couple of cases and some suits, and the pass that'll be available for people to get potentially all future content, which is a bit of a nebulous term at the moment. Will you be continuing to support the game beyond the content you've announced?
We're talking about it, and we, as I said, the game was, quite bigger than it was, bigger than how ridiculously big it already is. But so it's not like we'd made these cases and we could have put them on the disc, because you've seen on the 360 it's on 3 discs. So, the only way we could have done it is put it on 4 or put it on another layer on the Blu-ray. So we made the decision quite a long time ago to take those cases out and then make them available as DLC. So we kept working on them, and we're still working on them now. So we're going to support it for as long as people want to keep the people are fans and the people who actually kind of like it and love it.
Now, I've got to ask, there have been so many PC gamers clamoring for a version of the game on their platform of choice. Will we ever see a PC version of L.A. Noire?
Well, I think Rockstar in the past have supported PC. There's no reason why it couldn't be. I think the big argument obviously is with console games it's easier to make some money, whereas on PC games, unless you go through some more complicated kind of DRM, it's you generally just get pirated a lot, so it doesn't really pay the bills or keep anybody in a job. So it gets more difficult on the PC. But obviously the PCs are more than capable of playing it, and the PC audience would seem to be the kind of people who would kind of get this game too. So fingers crossed, but there's been no decision yet.
And they say that behind every character and everyone that writes it, there's a little bit of them in the game? Is there any you in any of the characters?
There is. There's funny ones. There's more of people like my father in characters like Captain Donnelly. Because my parents are Irish and they came out here. So yeah, there's a lot of his expressions are kind of the expressions of people like Captain Donnelly, who's actually, funnily enough, based on a real LA cop called Captain Jack Donahue, who, funnily enough, is obviously the same character that the guy in LA Confidential was based on as well. So we were doing the same sort of research as Mr. Elroy. So it was fun to do an Irish character, obviously having an Irish father.
Let's talk a little bit about the future of Team Bondi. How big is the team now, and what's the future of the franchise and the studio?
The team is about 45 or something at the moment, and most of them are on holidays, so recovering. We're all recovering a bit. Rockstar call this period the void, the bit after you ship the game, so that's kind of interesting. And they're all enjoying it at the moment because the game's out there and it's taken on a life of its own, and people seem to be enjoying it and resonating with people. So we're kind of watching that and enjoying that. Once people are having a break, we're sort of having a kind of rethink about our tech and where we go next. What could we do better? What things have we learned? What things have people said about the game that they'd like to see different? And then we're kicking around some new concepts at the moment. So it's been 6+ years on one kind of idea or story. So we're pretty keen to do something new.
Now, obviously, there's a slight spoiler in the end of the game, but have you ruled out the option of a sequel?
No, I don't think I have, or I don't think Rockstar have. The thing is, John Marston didn't make it through RDR either. So, I don't think the guys who run Rockstar are ever very scared of taking whatever the franchise in a new direction, and that's kind of one of their strengths, I think, because people tend to make something and then try and remine it the same way and crank out another one, and they don't. They take their time and they make the best possible thing they can, and they kind of reinvent it every time. And GTA is a classic example of that. It would have been really easy to do more Vice City, but they didn't. They went and did San Andreas, and the people, without speaking with the people who run Rockstar, I think they're really conscious of kind of not milking what they have and trying to make it fresh every time for an audience. So even though it's a sequel, it feels like a brand new game.
Review scores. It's the elephant in the room. Do you think, so close to the project, that the game got the scores that it deserved? And was there a case of anybody, not to name names, but was there a case of anybody not getting L.A. Noire?
I think that, resoundingly, we got good scores. We're averaging 90 on Metacritic and the same sort of thing on game ranking. So if someone asked you at the start, would you take 9 out of 10 for any game, I think you'd say yes. Once we'd finished the game, would we like to get 100 out of 100? Well, everybody would, but and we got loads of those. I think that some of the people who were expecting GTA kind of went, oh, this isn't GTA, so they kind of scored it based on that. But it's definitely found its audience. There are people out there who've kind of played it, reviewed it, and even the mainstream sort of stuff has been incredible. Things like the New York Times, New York Post, USA Today, The Guardian, Telegraph. It made the BBC Culture Show. So I don't think that's probably ever happened before for a video game. So Tribeca, people got it. So there are people out there who completely got it, and some of the games press didn't. But the main thing is we think we're pretty well, critically well, well received, and also sales wise it's going great. So people are out there and they're kind of buying it and playing it, and that's all anybody can ask for.
You mentioned Tribeca, and it's a great segue into my last question for you. You were there. Tell us a bit about the response from non-gamers in particular, and what does the inclusion of a game like L.A. Noire at the Tribeca Film Festival mean to gaming?
I don't know what it means to gaming per se, but it means a lot to me personally, and it means a lot to Rockstar, because what they've been trying to do for the past 10 years and what I've been trying to do for the past 10 years or longer. And it was very stressful to sit in a room with 300 people in in the cinema and see them, effectively just watch the game, and to see whether it would hold up, because like you're sitting there for an hour watching a case unfold and see whether it would actually hold up for people. And funnily enough, it did. As a game, someone who makes it, you just sit there and go, oh god, this bit's broken or that bit's broken or something terrible. But the general audience thing was, it went down really well, and had to have people come up afterwards, and people who are filmmakers or directors, writers, and all this kind of saying like, wow, I'd love to be, if that's what video games are going to be about, I'd like to get involved, or there's a future for all sorts of people in this kind of stuff. So all of that kind of stuff makes it exciting, and made it a kind of great moment. And just the sort of level of humanity that we got into the game this time round, I think that kind of resonated with the whole audience. So that part of it was great. It was great as well. And whether that's a watershed moment for games, there's probably been lots of watershed moments for games, but that it's one in a way where what we're trying to do in terms of storytelling, or what Rockstar's trying to do is storytelling gets appreciated by the mainstream. And I think what it did do was made a lot more mainstream people kind of think, okay, well that's what video games might be about. That's one version of what the video game future is. That's kind of interesting for me. And the other flip of the coin was that all of that stuff's great, but if people buy it, then we have something, we have somewhere to go, somewhere to work. And if it hadn't been number 1 2 weeks in a row around the world, then we're all probably sitting here saying, oh, it was critically acclaimed, but it was it was an experiment. But I actually think it's actually a direction now as opposed to an experiment.